Woo! Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9 News and Talk Bloomington Normal. So do appreciate you tuning in each and every single morning. It's a daily show from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. Monday through Friday. So I quick announcement. I do want to inform you that Chris Sitgell is now going to be on in the mornings instead of Hugh Hewitt. Hugh Hewitt has been going to afternoons. So you probably woke up this morning right before me. It's Hugh Hewitt. You didn't hear Hugh Hewitt and you were like, wait a second. Who's this guy? Chris Sitgall. Now, he is really, really cool. Check him out on social media. And one thing that I really like is this social media post that he actually put out, Chris Sitgall. Or Stigall, sorry, I'm saying his name wrong. Stigall. He says this on social media. I really hate to say aloud that I believe little I hear about many things from most people. But that's the case. Obvious political and corrupt agendas on one side, less easily identifiable clickbait and brand building on the other. Okay, so you've got clickbait, you've got brand building on one side, and then on the other side, you've got corrupt agendas, political agendas, and it's really hard to find news that you trust, and there's just so much to pick from. You got the brand building on one side, and then you've also got the corrupt agenda on the other side, the mainstream media. And he's like, look, the word of God is trustworthy, and that's about it. Journalism, official Washington, and yes, even the podcasters and influencers that claim to have the real story are anything I can trust personally. It's a minefield out there. Walk cautiously. So he says to walk cautiously and be careful of what you consume, because people might even claim, these influencers, they might claim to have the real story. And really, it's just all about clickbait and brand building. So Chris Stigall is now going to be replacing Hugh Hewitt in the morning. If you guys tune in, Cities 92.9, right before my show, you're going to be hearing Chris Stigall. And check him out on social media. He's got some really hot takes, and I think that he is a great addition to the Cities 92.9 lineup. All right, so we've got so much to get to this morning, and I'm glad that you've joined me, because it's going to be a packed show again this week. Again this Monday. I feel like Mondays are very packed. So much happens over the weekend, and I just want to unpack the entire weekend for you on Monday, and then there's news going out early on Monday morning. So let me get to a story that happened over the weekend. What happened at the Bloomington Eastland Mall over the weekend? There hasn't been a whole lot of information out there about what had actually happened. That's not your fault. It's actually, and I know people are going to be upset, it's the PR teams at Bloomington Police Department's fault. I'm going to be honest with you. There was one post made about this, and it didn't seem to have a whole lot of information. So the Bloomington Police Department, in this post about this robbery that took place over the weekend, they urged civilians who were traumatized by the robbery to not spread misinformation. So they used their one post to talk about this crime to go after civilians and urge them to not spread so-called misinformation, which it was misinformation. There was no shooter, nothing like that at the Bloomington Eastland Mall. Social media posts were circulating. So I'm not mad that the Bloomington police came out and provided facts that there was no shooter and it was not a mass shooting. However, there were loud noises. They didn't describe what had actually happened that led to people believing that there could have been a gun at the Bloomington Eastland Mall. They didn't discuss anything like that. They just said that there was no gun, and there was a report for burglary. Well, there's a big difference between burglary and robbery. From the eyewitness that was there, that was actually robbed, by their description, and this has not been confirmed by the Bloomington police, but they won't confirm it for some odd reason. Well, although you have the witness coming out and confirming that they were robbed, for some odd reason, they don't want to call it a robbery. They said that they responded to a report of a burglary. It sounds like a robbery to me. A guy comes in, smashes this jewelry case with a hammer, smash and grab. So I'm going to get to that. We're also going to get to the Normal Fire Department saying that there's misinformation surrounding the LA Fire Department's response. Okay. Yes. Normal fire department. They said that the systems needed to fight a fire of this scale does not exist. I agree, but I think what the normal fire department is missing here is there is a discussion happening, and it's not we shouldn't deem it misinformation of why this happened, how they were underprepared, the municipal government there, and what strategies need to be taken and implemented to limit the loss of life and limit the catastrophic damage we're seeing now. And I think that this fire was totally preventable. I think that they could be responding better to the situation that's unfolding there. Yes, this fire is of a massive it's a huge fire. And I do believe the fire department and their explanation here of how the fire hydrants work and how there is no way to actually put out a fire on the ground like this because it's so large. Yes, 100%. But it should have never gotten to this point. That's what people are talking about. And that's not misinformation, trying to have a discussion about what strategies need to be taken in the future to prevent catastrophic damage like this. So we're going to chat about that. We're also going to get to a clip of an angry citizen who actually ran up to Governor Gavin Newsom, and he pulls out this pathetic move, and he's like, oh, I'm on the phone with the president. I'm on the phone with the president. I'm going to get on the phone with the president, to this angry citizen who lost everything. And it's just, actually, it's really heart-wrenching to kind of watch this clip of this angry citizen in California. So we're going to get to all of that here on Conservative Cat Cities 92.9. Let's go back to this story. The city of Bloomington, they posted an information release on their social media page, Facebook. You guys can go check it out. I'm just going to read word for word what they had posted on the social media post, okay? Quote, we are aware of social media posts circulating that claim there were shots fired inside the Eastland Mall. We can confirm that that information is not true. At approximately 6:03 p.m. on Friday, Bloomington police officers were dispatched to the Eastland Mall for a report of a burglary. Okay, I don't know how the 911 call went down. I got to try to avoid this 911 call. I want to see what they actually said in the 911 call, if they had actually used the word burglary. I don't know whoever placed the 911 call to get the city of Bloomington police out there. I don't know if they used the term burglary, but there's a big difference between burglary and robbery. Robbery is when the robber comes face to face with the victim. Burglary, it doesn't necessarily mean that the individual was face to face with the victim. So there was a police presence at the location. Moving on with the social media post, shots were not fired and no evidence of gunfire was discovered. The investigation into this incident is ongoing. Quote, we encourage everyone to verify information before sharing it online, as spreading false claims can cause unnecessary fear and confusion. As always, if you witness suspicious activity, contact us. Okay, so so much to unpack here. I did see the post circulating on social media, and I was asking the people who were posting this, you know, the multiple people who were running out of the Bloomington Mall. It wasn't packed. If you've ever been to the Eastland Mall, you probably could imagine that there's maybe like 10 people in the whole mall that day. It's usually pretty empty. However, there were people, I guess, in the food court around, you know, the Rogers and Holland, which is this jewelry store there. And like I said, this is all going off of this individual who says that they were there and they were the victim of the robbery. Okay. This is Francis, who, you know, published this right underneath the post on the City Bloomington Police Facebook post. Francis, the victim of the crime, says, if anyone is interested in what actually happened, I work at Rogers and Holland, and I was the one who actually made the 911 call tonight when we were robbed. See, I'd be curious if Francis actually used the word burglary in the 911 call, because Francis here, the victim of the crime, who is describing what happened, is saying that it is using the word robbed. Okay, not burglary. Big difference. Burglary kind of feels like, by definition, less extreme than a robbery. Quote, there were no shots fired. This is Francis, the victim. The sound everyone heard was a young man smashing one of our cases with a large hammer. Okay. It took him 8 smashes to finally get the case open. It was loud and scary. There was no gun, no shots fired, both of which me and my 2 coworkers are thankful for. Please do not spread false information. Bloomington Police Department responded quickly, and they're doing everything they can to track whoever did this down. Okay, so no suspect, no, information for the public. If you own and operate a jewelry store, I'm sure you probably want to know what this guy looks like, to be on the lookout, right? There's no picture, no nothing published with this. It was just really what stood out to me was this: we encourage everyone to verify information before sharing it online. So did they catch the burglar? What's the suspect's name? They didn't provide any of that. They didn't explain why witnesses on social media, they went to social media and they were warning people, hey, stay away from the Eastland Mall. This is what I don't understand. What is the damage done when, okay, you caused unnecessary fear and confusion? I don't know about that. Maybe if somebody went to social media, said, it sounds like gunfire. I think there's a shooter at the Eastland Mall, right? Or even if they claim there's a shooter at the Eastland Mall, most likely the outcome here is that you're not going to go to the Eastland Mall and you're going to stay away from the Eastland Mall, which is exactly what we probably would have wanted. So I don't really see the damage done here, number one. Number two, victims can be wrong. You're in a heightened state of emotion when you hear those popping noises, which was actually the sound of a hammer smashing the glass to get the jewelry, and he smashed it 8 times. And you're not, you don't see the hammer, you don't see the guy, but you hear it, and you're in the mall, and people start screaming and running. You are in a situation where your emotions are heightened, and you're not really thinking about verifying information. You're like, okay, I need to tell my friends and family to avoid the Eastland Mall, and I'm going to, say what I thought was happening. This is really sad because you're chilling victims from coming forward. You're chilling victims. If you don't say the correct information, we're going to accuse you of unnecessary fear and confusion. It's really quite tragic. What did they want the victims to go do? Of this, did they want to go, or did they want them to go run and verify to see what the noise was? I mean, really, is that what you're asking these people to do? Perhaps, if Bloomington Police Department, and I'm not ripping on officers, okay, I know I'm going to get that, how could you rip on officers? Look, folks, I guarantee, and I'm willing to bet that the people who post these social media posts on City of Bloomington Facebook page are not actually officers who are responding to situations like this. This is probably somebody on the PR team, and I have no idea who operates their social media. But this was just a terrible response. It was snarky. It accused victims of being the ones who caused the fear and confusion. I'll tell you who actually caused the fear and confusion. It's the guy who robbed somebody by using a deadly weapon. A hammer is a deadly weapon. Didn't use it against the victim, but used it, of course, to smash open the glass to get the jewelry and rob the Eastland Mall. So there's so much to really unpack here, but here's actually somebody who commented on the post. I don't know who this guy is. He must be a resident, but I really like what he has to say here. Quote, the situation surrounding the Eastland Mall incident highlights the tensions between real-time perceptions, freedom of speech, and the need for accurate communication during emergencies. Okay, they should have been on that as soon as dispatch went out, and I just don't understand why this isn't a thing. As soon as dispatch went out for a report of a burglary, City of Bloomington Police, they should have gotten on their social media and let everybody know, hey, there's a situation. You don't have to describe the situation. There's a situation, avoid the area, okay? And then post the information as you get it. You probably, if you did that consistently, City of Bloomington Police, you wouldn't have social media users taking to the internet to try to warn their friends and family. If you were on top of it and if you had accurate communication during emergencies, people wouldn't feel the need to communicate during emergencies if you were doing it. Okay, so while it's essential to avoid spreading misinformation, it's equally, this is Freeland is his name on social media, and he posted this publicly. It's available, so you guys can go read it. It's not like I'm, destroying the trust of these people. They posted it, publicly for everyone to read. So while it's essential to avoid spreading misinformation, it's equally important to recognize that individuals were responding to what they genuinely experienced. People at the mall acted based on what they saw and heard in a highly stressful situation. A victim of hearing, he describes a victim, her account of hearing shouts about a shooter and seeing people running frantically because people were saying shooter, shooter, shooter after hearing the hammer. Nobody saw the gun. Nobody saw him shoot anybody, obviously. But with all of that combined, there was a real reflects a natural reaction to what she perceived as danger. That's what he says here in the social media post, this resident. Her intent wasn't to spread falsehoods, but to share her perspective on what happened in a moment of fear and uncertainty. By speaking up, she might have prompted others to take precautions, which could have saved lives in the rare case that this situation escalated. Okay, had the situation escalated and he didn't just run, and instead he turned around and started using the hammer on people. Okay, had that situation escalated, the people on social media saying, stay away from the mall, there's a shooter, right? They perceived it wrong. It wasn't a gun. But they could have prompted people to take precautions and to stay away from the mall. Quote, freedom of speech is a cornerstone of public safety. Citizens have the right to report what they see and hear, especially if they believe a crime or a danger is unfolding. Dismissing or ridiculing someone for speaking up can discourage others from reporting suspicious activity in the future, potentially putting more lives at risk. The discussion should focus on learning from this incident. The police rightly clarified the facts to prevent further confusion, but it would be more constructive to emphasize the cooperation between authorities and the public instead of framing the social media post as false information and acknowledging the validity of her immediate experience could foster trust and improve the community response during crises. Okay, so yes, if you acknowledged, yes, that was a legitimate concern people had, victims had, that is not what happened. We found out that there was no gun. We are working with the public and we are cooperating with the public, us, the authorities, to figure out how to catch this guy. Okay. Misjudging sounds as gunshots and reacting quickly isn't childish. It's human nature. And especially in today's climate of heightened awareness about public safety, rather than picking on these people who posted, it wasn't just one person, it was multiple people who said that there was a shooter. This situation could inspire broader conversation about how we better prepare for emergencies, educate the public on accurate reporting, and balance urgency with verification. After all, public safety is a shared responsibility. Love that. I do have to take a quick break. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Hey, good morning. Appreciate you listening. Going shopping with a hammer. I just couldn't believe what this story. I mean, and then they say it's a burglary and not a robbery, and they use this term, we responded to a report of a burglary. Now, I'd imagine the person who said that they made the 911 call commented on this social media post and used the terminology robbed. So there's a big difference between burglary and robbed. Let me give you the definitions here. Okay. The main difference between a robbery and a burglary is that a burglary involves entering a structure with the intent to commit theft or some other crime. Okay, robbery does not necessarily involve entering a structure. Now, this is a public location, right? It's not like he burglarized his way in there. It was an open location. Burglary involves entering a building or other structure, while robbery can occur anywhere as long as there is a direct interaction with the victim. So robbery is having a direct interaction with the victim, obviously interacting with this victim who called this in. They were working at this Rogers and Holland, this jewelry store. I'd imagine that there was a direct interaction, but he was smashing, right, 8 times is what this individual who witnessed this had said, smashed and then grabbed all kinds of rings. And there's, reports about how people at the mall went and they picked up the rings and returned it to Rogers and Holland, which just goes to show you how awesome, community can be. However, it's not awesome when you have an authority like the Bloomington police coming out and accusing the people who experienced this trauma, accusing them of, quote, unnecessary fear and confusion, of spreading false claims, which caused unnecessary. They literally are accusing people of causing unnecessary fear. And I'm going to be honest with you, the only individual who caused unnecessary fear that day is the guy who, I don't know, took a hammer and smashed up a glass case, wielded what I call a deadly weapon, a hammer, right? And was smashing things in order to steal them. Okay, that's the person who caused the unnecessary fear. And, I feel like cop 101. Now, I'm not a cop and by any means, but I feel like most people know this. The victim tends to get details wrong, right? If you witness an extreme car accident, most likely you're not going to remember what color shoes the guy had or what color t-shirt, and you might get some of these small details wrong. Why? Because you're in a heightened state of fear, of emotion, because you are in a situation that is dangerous or that you perceive to be dangerous. And really what this feels like is just dismissive of what happened that day at Eastland Mall. I'd love to find out who the suspect is because it'd be very interesting to find out if this suspect had priors. Is he known to police? Has he been doing this for a long time, robbing people? I'd want to know. So, like I said, this whole we encourage people to verify the information. Somebody reading this might honestly believe that verifying the information means trying to look for the gun. And I don't know about you, but that sounds like a recipe for disaster if you have victims of crime running towards a loud popping sound to verify if it's a gun. I really don't like the idea of having witnesses try to verify, or victims of crime trying to verify information before sharing it online. This is freedom of speech. This was a real perception that some individuals had. It was multiple people who had posted this because somebody had actually told me, they had messaged me and they said, hey, I think there's a shooter. I had 2-3 people message me, hey, I think there's a shooter at Eastland Mall. And then I was like, okay, let me try to figure it out. And it turned out that they had posted this, this information, shortly after it all happened. So it happened around 6:03 p.m. It only took a couple of hours for the city of Bloomington to post this. I wish that they would have provided more information. Is there a suspect? Did he get away? They should have put more information in this post if they are actually wanting to get correct information out there, then correct it. Okay, don't come out with this accusation and not information. Okay, and not to mention they said that they responded to a report of a burglary. Well, was there a burglary? Was there a robbery? Tell us what actually happened. But they didn't, obviously. So, that's another reason why people take to social media, is because they probably feel like Bloomington's post, they don't consistently have key facts. And now you as the social media user, or you as a resident, or you as a victim of a crime, you feel the need to go inform others on social media inaccurately in most cases, unfortunately, because if you're a victim of a crime, like I said, there is going to be likely inaccuracies in your account because of your heightened emotional state. You're not thinking rationally in that moment. And, this is what I called it was victim blaming. That's what I called it. And really, I know that sounds awful to accuse the police department of that, but I mean, I don't know how much clearer it gets. It's clearly victim blaming. You accused individuals, civilians, of causing, quote, unnecessary fear and confusion. Civilians who witnessed a traumatizing event, whether that was with their eyes or with their ears. Okay. And it's a terrible look for a police department. It really is. It's a terrible look. It really is. Victim blaming is a terrible look. There's probably an explanation, of course, for these popping sounds. I've discussed with you the details from the individual who claims to have called in the robbery. They said that they were robbed at Rogers and Holland in the Eastland Mall. They said that somebody took a hammer, smashed the glass around 8 times. But unfortunately, the City of Bloomington Police Post gives very little information about the suspect, gives it no information as to why members of the public who were there at Eastland Mall ran out screaming, there's a shooter, there's a shooter. They ran out thinking that there was a shooter. Obviously, it sounds, if you're not sure what a gunshot sounds like, or if you're not around guns, and if you're in a heightened state of emotion, you're going to think, what's the worst case? Gun. Somebody's here shooting, which was not the case. And people shared it on social media. And rather provide more information, the City of Bloomington Police said that the victims of the crime were unnecessarily causing fear and confusion. I don't know. I'm just going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say, I think the criminal was causing unnecessary fear and confusion by taking a hammer into a store and robbing people. Experiencing something like that is traumatizing, and you shouldn't be blamed for sharing your experiences with others in the community. What did the cops want the victims to do? Run towards the sound and verify if it was actually gunshots? That's supposed to be their job. Okay, so I'm praying for healing. If anybody who's involved, give me a text, 309-451-9299, if I can help you in any kind of way. But I will be very upset to find out if this suspect actually has prior arrest, has been doing this for a long time in the community, which sometimes happens to be the case. And really what that would mean is that the police are projecting insecurities onto the population of Bloomington. Right? They're projecting their insecurities. They're actually the ones to blame for allowing a criminal to remain on the streets. Okay, now I'm not saying that this guy has priors. I have no idea who the guy is because they didn't provide the information. All they said is that they responded to a report of a burglary, which doesn't even sound right because a burglary is different from a robbery. But not posting if they made an arrest, not posting, who they think this guy is. And I understand if they don't know, maybe the guy wore a mask. But post, what actually happened. It was a guy who took a hammer and smashed up the glass. What's so hard about, saying that if it actually happened? According to the victim of the crime, the direct victim who had this interaction with the robber or the alleged robber, they, described how he smashed the glass 8 times. Now, I don't even know if that's true because the Bloomington Police is out there saying that you can't believe what you read online. People are spreading false claims, and I don't even know if that's true, but they aren't helping. And it's really sad. Retailers, be safe out there. What do I say? Always keep your head on a swivel. Always keep your head on a swivel. Be safe. Because you might be a target. Who knows, right? This guy, if he's still out there and he's robbing people, you might be a target of a robbing or of a robbery. So be careful, have your head on a swivel, right? And I'm not causing unnecessary fear by saying that. Okay, I think that that's it's common sense to keep your head on a swivel when you know that this had happened in your community and there is no information on an arrest or any kind of suspect information. And I'm not ripping into police officers. Love police officers. I'm glad that they responded quickly. They really did. They had a post out there by 8 o'clock about what had happened, which wasn't really anything. They didn't describe anything that had happened, but obviously they responded to the incident. pretty quickly. So that's great. And shame on the person who posted this, though, really. I don't know who's in charge of that, but shame on the person who posted this. It really came off snarky, and it came off as if you were victim blaming, because you said that people who posted things in a heightened state of emotion, people who were victims of this crime who posted things in a heightened state of emotion, those were false, yes. But victims are allowed to be wrong because of the way because of the trauma that they go through. And to go out there and say that they caused unnecessary fear and confusion, no, it's the guy who, I don't know, went into a store and robbed people and used a hammer to cause destruction. Okay, so I do have to shift gears. I want to talk a little bit about the Normal Fire Department now. Yeah, we're just hitting them all. Okay, we're hitting it all this morning. Packed show this morning. Normal Fire Department thought that they'd weigh in on the response from the LA Fire Department on Facebook. So they're going to describe, how the systems needed to fight a fire this large, fires this large, are there is systems that are needed to fight a fire this large do not exist. Okay, that is the sentiment of the Normal Fire Department's Facebook post here. So, quote, this is what they said. By now, you've undoubtedly seen the devastation of the wildfires in California this week. Quote, it's hard to imagine the situation that they are facing, but this may help put it into perspective. Okay. The last estimates of the Palisades fire shows more than 31.2 square miles completely destroyed. That's 2.4 times the size of the town of Normal. Okay, so they put the map of the fire and how the square miles and what was destroyed over the town of Normal, and it's 2 times the size of the town of Normal, the land that's been destroyed there. Okay, here is the outline, and they provide this outline. It's like a shaded outline, and they placed it over the town of Normal. They said, here's an outline of the Palisades fire scaled and placed over the top of the town of Normal. Quote, the systems needed to fight a fire on this scale do not exist. No municipal water supply is designed to handle this kind of strain that the firefighting efforts in California are putting on it. Okay, the fire hydrant is opened. It takes a very large volume of water out of the system rapidly, which affects the remaining supply and lowers the available pressure elsewhere. Yes, eventually the pumps that refill the tanks won't be able to keep up with the water that is being pumped out, and pressure will drop. The area is larger than the corporate limits of the town of Normal, with thousands of structures burning simultaneously, not to mention the 80-mile-per-hour winds creating a firestorm throughout homes and dry vegetation. Firefighting on the ground is virtually impossible in this scenario, and aerial tankers, planes, helicopters to drop water initially couldn't fly due to high winds. Okay, so remember, this is just one of several major fires burning too. So the Palisades fire, there's like an Eaton fire. I don't remember all of the names of them, but there's multiple fires here, folks, that are just huge, massive. Normal Fire Department is all right. All of this is true, accurate stuff. It's probably damn near impossible to fight these fires on the ground at this point. You need definitely aerial tankers, helicopters to drop that water or like some sort of retardant on these fires at this point, because they're just so massive you can't fight them on the ground. But they couldn't do that because of the high winds, 80-mile-per-hour winds, which isn't anything odd. They usually experience that this time of year, by the way, in California, the high winds. But there's to continue with the Normal Fire Department post, there's plenty of misinformation being spread out there. God, I love when people say, oh, it just burns me up. There's a discussion happening. It doesn't mean that there's misinformation out there. Okay. There's plenty of misinformation being spread. So we encourage you to get the information from multiple sources and from experts. So you can't listen to the victims of the crime there, or victims of the fire there. Or it is criminal what these municipalities have done that have led up to this point. Nobody's really even talking about the water, the response. What they're talking about is the prevention, one, of the fire. Two, why is it so dry, right? What's been going on where it's so dry? It's because half of the state has been deprived water because of Governor Gavin Newsom's green weenie policies. Okay, so The fire department goes on. They say in a 24-hour news cycle, there's a lot of time to fill. And sometimes there's a lot of filler and opinions and there's not actual facts being shared. The fire is 8 times greater than the Great Chicago Fire. It's a disaster on a scale that is hard to comprehend. We are thinking of all of the firefighters and everyone trying to mitigate this disaster. Our sympathies go out to the lives lost and those that have lost everything. I do have to take a quick break, but we're going to respond, of course, to the Normal Fire Department and their accusations of misinformation being spread. Just because you're critical of the municipalities who really, I'm going to say, caused this fire, neglected their community so much to where this fire, it is impossible now. I mean, it's gotten so out of control, it is impossible to fight. And it wouldn't be possible to fight even if you had all of the money in the world because these fires are so huge. But it got this way over time because of the failures of the Los Angeles mayor's office, because of the failures of the Los Angeles Fire Department, because of the failures of Governor Gavin Newsom. Okay, the municipalities, the people who are in charge of these municipalities and these entities are to blame. They are to blame. The Los Angeles Fire Department has sent equipment and personnel over to Ukraine. Okay. Ukraine isn't even part of the United States. They sent equipment. They sent fire trucks. They sent helmets, rescue gear. They sent all of their equipment over to Ukraine in early 2023. Should I also talk about how Mayor Karen, she suggested that we reduce and she did in 2023, the LA Fire Department's budget by $17 million. Okay, that didn't do anything to help anybody. The budget cut was part of a broader fiscal planning to address Los Angeles's financial needs and priorities. The proposal focused on redirecting the resources to the Los Angeles Fire Department to homelessness services. Okay, so they took the $17 million away from the LA Fire Department, and then they redirected those funds to addressing homelessness, which hasn't really helped. So there's so much I could unpack here, but at the end of the day, what really people are talking about are why weren't we doing controlled burns? Why is it so dry? Why don't we have water that keeps the land wet? Okay, the reason why is Governor Gavin Newsom depriving the rest of the state of water. The other reason, controlled burns. Thank you, Biden administration, for outlawing controlled burns, which is supposed to clear up the forest and clear up that dry vegetation. And I mean, there's just so much here. Not to mention, I don't think sending equipment over to Ukraine is probably the best use of your resources. I'm going to be honest with you, LA Fire Department. So when they say that there is no way to fight these fires, okay. But there is a way to prevent these fires, and there is a way to better respond to these fires. And having a depleted budget of $17 million and donating all of your fire equipment to a foreign country that isn't even a part of NATO, donating all of your equipment over there, and then also on top of that, installing people who we're going to get to this woman. She's a DEI character, installing this fire chief, LA's assistant fire chief. In an official video, she said that it's your husband's fault if he needs to be saved by her and for her to carry him out. You're going to love this official video. I can't believe that she actually put it out there. But we're going to be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. The Bloomington police chief is again showing his contempt for Bloomington citizens, and I'm sure the Illinois State Police is glad he's gone, just like the memo for needing to arrest more white people. I didn't see that memo. That's interesting. If you could send me an email, I'll go ahead and throw my email here in the chat. It's cat@gpmbloomington.com. If you guys want to send me an email with that information, I haven't heard of that before, that memo. If you could send me the article, I haven't heard of that before. But yeah, I mean, victims of crime should not be blamed for their reactions to not even crime, but natural disasters. Okay, we're going to get to this woman who runs up to Governor Gavin Newsom, accuses him of, not responding and not responding well, and to kind of like really what this feels like, this social media post from the Normal Fire Department. what it feels like is they are justifying the incompetence that is going on in Los Angeles right now. And I'm not saying that, they've got to put out these fires. I mean, we're past that point. Okay, let's start thinking about, how we are going to prevent this type of catastrophic damage in the future. Let's start having a conversation of how we prepare going forward. I'm going to be honest with you, cutting the fire department's budget by $17 million, probably not a great way to move forward. Okay. And, that probably didn't help. I'm willing to bet that didn't help the response. The normal fire department says that there are no systems that exist to fight a fire on this scale, and I believe it. But let's start doing forest preservation. Let's start making sure that California has water downstate. Okay, from the northern area to downstate. Gavin Newsom, he wanted to protect the Delta smelt. I've talked about this before. There's been several policies that have been put in place too. And don't believe me, believe the farmers. Okay, now the farmers have been after Governor Gavin Newsom for years now. In recent years, Governor Gavin Newsom has been involved in efforts to protect and restore the species, the Delta smelt, okay, which is on the brink of extinction. Natural selection, yes, extinction happens, and if you can't survive, then you die. Okay, that's just the way it goes. Human beings, unlike the Delta smelt, understand our extinction, and we're aware of our extinction, which is why we celebrate our birthdays and make a big deal out of birthdays, and why we have gender reveal parties, right? Because we're aware of our extinction. We know how important it is to populate the earth. Delta smelts, they don't understand that, and they're just going to go extinct. Like the dinosaurs, it's good for the dinosaurs. It's good that the dinosaurs went extinct. Okay, so they weren't able to, they're not able to live, the Delta smelt, without the intervention of human beings. So I say, just let them go extinct, okay? We can't prioritize a little fish over the human life. So in recent years, Governor Gavin Newsom, for example, in 2021, his administration worked on strategies to balance water management in the state while safeguarding endangered species like the Delta smelt. These measures often involve water restrictions in Sacramento's San Joaquin Delta, where the smelt resides. Okay, so they don't want to drain the water to go to other places in California because they want the water there for the Delta smelt. And the implementation of policies that aim to restore its habitat and improve its conditions for the species. So they want to improve the conditions for the species and allow that species to have all the water it needs, I guess. The protections for the Delta smelt, of course, have been controversial, especially in agricultural areas. Okay, so don't believe me, believe the farmers and the stakeholders who have been arguing this for years now in California, that these environmental restrictions hurt water access. Okay, conservationists and environmental groups have emphasized there's an importance to protecting this Delta smelt. I don't understand why, for the broader ecosystem or whatever it is. I don't believe it. If it's going extinct, it's going extinct for a reason. Let it go extinct. Why intervene as a human being for these little fish? Okay, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So Newsom's administration has faced pressure from both environmental groups and agricultural interests, and he continues to advocate for policies that seek to protect the smelt. Okay, and he wants to restore its population. That's what this is all about. That's why the entire state of California, pretty much the entire state of California, doesn't have water, because they are hoarding the water to protect the habitat of this Delta smelt. Okay, so having a conversation about why Governor Gavin Newsom is doing this, having a conversation about the LA Fire Department not hiring based off merit, but really what your insignificant preferences are in the bedroom. Yes, there's 3 lesbians in upper management for the LA Fire Department, which is insane. Which I would have no problem with if they were hired based on merit, but clearly these women were not hired based on merit. As a firefighter, you definitely need to be bulked out. You have to carry people out of fires, okay? These people, I don't think that they could carry a bag of Doritos out of the grocery store, let alone a full-grown man out of a fire, but we're going to get to that here in just a second. You're listening to Conservative Cat. Woo! Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk Bloomington Normal. So do appreciate you tuning in. Look, folks, the question is here, what is being discussed, it's not misinformation. What's being discussed by victims of this fire, by people who live in Los Angeles, what's being discussed are potential strategies that are needed to limit the catastrophic damage and loss of life that we're seeing in LA in California right now. And there are strategies we can take and that the municipalities there, the officials there can take in order to prevent loss of life and catastrophic damage. They didn't implement those strategies before. Okay, that's why they have to implement them now. And suggesting that the officials, the government officials there in LA or in the state of California, Governor Gavin Newsom failed at implementing strategies that were needed to limit this kind of catastrophic damage, to suggest that they failed at doing that is not wrong. It's actually correct. So I'm going to get to the normal fire department and how they're, saying, oh, be careful of misinformation being spread. We encourage you to get all the information from experts. They're saying that, the systems needed to fight a fire of this scale do not exist. Yes, you'd probably be right. But why does a fire of this scale exist? It's because of the systemic failures of not only the LA Fire Department, but the LA Mayor's office, Governor Gavin Newsom's office, the legislators, the state legislators there in California. That is why we have a fire of this scale. Okay, Joe Biden, the Biden administration, he outlawed controlled burns, which should be happening in California to prevent things like this. They said in this post, the normal fire department, no municipal water supply is designed to handle this kind of strain that the firefighting efforts in California are putting on it. Yeah. So, and then they explained, how the fire hydrants, it just won't work. Fighting this fire on the ground won't work. There has to be some sort of helicopter or planes, but they couldn't do that initially, obviously, because the winds, 80-mile-per-hour winds. It is a mess. And the reason why it's a mess is because of the failures of progressives and the failed policies, the failed progressive policies that made this possible. And, I'm sorry, normal fire department, but you should be talking about how Karen Bass cut the fire department's budget by $17 million. Okay, you should be talking about how they sent all of their equipment, their fire tanks, their fire engines, their helmets, they sent all of that over away to Ukraine. You should also be talking about how Governor Gavin Newsom is depriving the entire state of water to protect the Delta smelt, a little fish species, from going extinct. I'll be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat. All right, go ahead and smash that like button, share this out with your friends. I so do appreciate you tuning in each and every single morning. When we come back, we are going to be talking a little bit about the citizen who approached Governor Gavin Newsom. Okay, and pretty much this is how the conversation went. She said, my neighborhood is burning down to the ground, and I'm paraphrasing, of course. Are you happy? What are you going to do about that? And Governor Gavin Newsom, he's like, I'm on the phone with the President of the United States right now. I'm going to try to get on the phone with him. And she goes, wait, Donald Trump? Are you on the phone with Donald Trump? And then he goes, no, the other guy. And the citizen says, great, go ahead, put him on speakerphone. Let's hear what President Biden has to say about what's going on here in LA. And Governor Gavin Newsom goes, well, I don't really have him on the phone yet. I'm trying to get him on the phone. I'm kind of surprised here in this video, that Governor Gavin Newsom didn't pick up the phone and mumble under his breath, ring, just to try to get out of this conversation with the citizen who is really upset. The citizen had the opportunity to confront Governor Gavin Newsom about this, and he did what any other leader would do. He took out his phone and he pretended to be talking with the President of the United States. Like, give me a break, okay? You're not doing anything, Governor Gavin Newsom. Neither is the fire department. Neither is the mayor's office. They didn't do anything to prevent this, okay? This loss of life, this catastrophic damage in 2019. Like I said, California Governor Gavin Newsom pledged to take care of the forests. Okay, he pledged to take care of the forest, and do correct forest preservation, which includes controlled burns, clearing out the area, making sure the ground is wet, making sure farmland is wet, and not depriving half of the state water. Okay. And he said that he's going to take care of the forest so that if there is a wildfire, this is what in 2019 Governor Gavin Newsom pledged, that it wouldn't burn down Los Angeles. And this has been predicted for years now. In 2019, who predicted it? I think it was Joe Rogan on his podcast. He had talked about how there was a firefighter in the LA fire department that was talking with him. And the LA fire department firefighter had said, if there's the right wind and there's, conditions that are favorable to a fire, we're not going to be able to respond. Okay, so in 2019, they all predicted this because the forest preservation has been neglected there. You fast forward 5 years from 2019, there's no water in the fire hydrants. And there's, woke excuses not to effectively manage these fires. Okay, so they're trying to say, oh, it's just impossible to fight. These fires are too big, or climate change. We just didn't see this coming. No, none of this was not. And none of this was just out of the blue. This was predicted since 2019 that something like this was going to happen, and the LA Fire Department was more concerned about marginalized boxes, checking these marginalized boxes, filling their assistant chief fire department gal there with a lesbian. They wanted to fill that role with a lesbian. There are 3 lesbians. I'm not kidding. 3 lesbians, which I don't care about their sexual preferences, really, if they're good at their job, but clearly they're not good at their job, okay? Because we've got something like this going on when there were predictions that a fire like this would happen and nobody did anything about forest preservation or ensuring that there was water to the rest of the state by signing this water restoration declaration. Look it up. Governor Gavin Newsom says it's totally fictitious. It's wrong. For years now, he's been implementing policies that protect the Delta smell and deprive farmers of water and keeping the grounds wet. And the farmers are pissed because their crops are dying because you need water for the crops. But the LA Fire Department has been more concerned about marginalized boxes. There are three top level people within the fire department, the LA Fire Department, who are all lesbian and all named Kristen, or like a variation of Kristen or Christine. 3. Okay, and I'm going to get to a video. You guys are really going to get a kick out of it. It's the assistant fire chief. She's on this video and she's talking about, how people don't think women can be firefighters, and how people look at her and say, oh, you couldn't carry my husband out of a fire. And she goes, yeah, well, your husband's the one who put him in or put himself in a situation where there was a fire. One, she does the victim blaming thing. 2, she talks about how she could lift a man out of a fire, which I don't think is possible for somebody of her stature. You're going to see the way she looks in this one video that I'm going to play later on in the show. But like I said, the LA Fire Department more concerned about DEI policies. Okay. And at this point, if the normal fire department here in town is going to, be talking about how it's impossible and how there are no systems in place to fight the fires on the ground at this point, which I don't disagree with. I think that it's gotten way out of hand, and I don't think that it's even safe for firefighters to be down there fighting these fires on the ground. I think you need to come in with a helicopter and drop some retardants on it and drop some water on the fires. At this point, they're just too big to be fighting with fire hydrants anyway. And I understand that. But how did we get to this place? How did we get here? And what strategies can we implement that will prevent loss of life and catastrophic damage like this? And I'm going to get to the normal fire department's response to that question. They responded to this question: what strategies are needed to limit and avoid catastrophic damage and loss of life? And the normal fire department actually responded. Really, that's what this is all about, is asking that question. And people are upset with their government leadership because there could have been strategies in place that prevented these types of wildfires. But unfortunately, those strategies and those policies weren't put in place, and now people are dead. Thank you, Governor Gavin Newsom. Thank you, Karen Bass, for causing this catastrophic damage. Woo! Hey, welcome to the show. It is Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and Talk Bloomington Normal. So do appreciate you tuning in. Chris Stigall. He is a radio personality, and he's taking over the Hugh Hewitt spot in the morning right before my show. My show is 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. Chris Stigall is going to be on right before me. It used to be the Hugh Hewitt show. One thing that you need to know about Chris Stigall is he is like this no BS radio personality. Okay, so there is actually a social media post I want to read of Chris Stickles, and he just nails it with this. He says, "I really hate to say it aloud, but I believe little I hear about many things from most people. But that's the case, and that's how I feel. I believe very little from these people that I hear. Obviously, there's political and corrupt agendas on one side. He's probably talking about the mainstream media. And then on the other side, you have clickbait brand building on the other." He goes, "The word of God is trustworthy, and that's about it." He says, "Journalism, official Washington, and yes, even podcasters and influencers who claim to have the real story aren't anything I can trust personally." And he says, and he urges you to walk cautiously. So he is all about correct information. He's not about the clickbait. He's not about, this political corrupt agenda that the mainstream media has. So tune into his show right before mine on Cities 92.9, the news and Talk Bloomington Normal. Before I took the break, I was telling you about the normal fire department. They say that there are no systems that exist that could fight fires that are this large. Okay, this is a huge fire, and I agree. I don't think you can fight these things on the ground at this point. Okay, there were 80-mile-per-hour winds. I think they could have used some helicopters to drop some water, but with the 80-mile-per-hour winds, you probably couldn't even get a helicopter up there. So they're right in this social media post. This is where they're wrong. They say there's plenty of misinformation being spread. So we encourage you to get information from multiple sources and experts. The 24-hour news cycle is a lot of time to fill. And sometimes there's a lot of filler and opinions that aren't actually facts being shared. Well, here's everybody's problem. It's not so much where we're at now. It's what strategies were needed to be put in place in order to prevent something like this. And people are peeved off at Karen Bass, Gavin Newsom, the LA Fire Department Assistant Chief. Okay, Kristen, there's 3 lesbians, and I don't care about your sexual preferences. I really don't. At the end of the day, they're insignificant preferences. You shouldn't be put into those positions because of insignificant preferences. But they're their focus, really, that's what this is. It's a focus on checking these boxes, these DEI boxes, the LA Fire Department, and that's why we're at where we're at. Just systemic failure after systemic failure. I shared with you in 2023, Mayor Bass of LA suggested reducing. Actually, she did reduce the LA Fire Department's budget by $17 million. Okay, I don't think that's helping anybody out in this situation with these massive fires. And really, the real question is, and this isn't information to say, hey, the current leadership, the progressive politicians, the Democrats who operate the state of California and the city of Los Angeles, these politicians, they didn't implement policies or they didn't have strategies that were needed to limit the loss of life and to limit this catastrophic damage that has been going on. So here's a question that was posed to the Normal Fire Department on social media. What's being discussed is how we are going to prepare going forward. What strategies are needed to limit and avoid catastrophic damage and loss of life? Here's the Normal Fire Department's response. Here we go. That's the billion-dollar question. I wish there was an easiest and obvious answer. I'm going to get to that here in just a second. There isn't one, says the Normal Fire Department. It's going to take a lot of coordination and cooperation to be able to mitigate risk and to provide the kind of protection they need. There's a lot of misinformation and a lot of anger and frustration on every side of this, understandably so. Once the emergency is over, the recovery will begin, and even before that happens, there will be discussion on mitigation and prevention, and hopefully there are some solutions that help. Unfortunately, sometimes it takes a major catastrophic event for major change to happen, and it seldom happens quickly. Look, folks, since 2019, people have been saying that there's going to be a fire of massive size. Okay, Joe Rogan on his podcast, I played it for you. There was a firefighter in the LA Fire Department who said it's just going to take the right wind, the right conditions, and there's going to be a fire that burns everything up to the ocean. Okay, burns down Los Angeles. And people have been predicting this for years. 3 months before the election, Donald Trump was on the Joe Rogan podcast as well and saying the exact same thing. He goes, they're going to have a hell of a time trying to put out these fires because of the policies that Governor Gavin Newsom has implemented. Okay, and this has been predicted. These fires were predicted 5 years ago. Okay, so it doesn't take a catastrophe to implement major change. No. It just takes people with common sense, controlled burns, forest preservation, making sure the entire state has the water, and not hoarding the water for a little tiny fish species called the Delta smelt. Okay, look it up. Governor Gavin Newsom has been feuding with the farmers because the farmers in California are begging for water so that their crops can grow, and they're depriving the farmers of water for this little species of fish. Give me a break. Here's the Normal Fire Department. They say our codes or our code books weren't written for fun. They were written as a result of death, destruction, in hopes of preventing it from happening again. No. Government or whoever is writing this on the Normal Fire Department. No. Preventing it means preventing it. Okay, you don't have to wait for a catastrophe to start implementing strategies that would prevent loss of life and catastrophic damage. You do that before there's catastrophic damage and loss of life. Okay, so the misinformation. People are angry with their officials, and they've got every right to be because their officials neglected their communities. Okay, the government officials neglected their communities. Here's how they did it. The Biden administration, the federal officials, the Biden administration, they outlawed controlled burns. Okay, this is why what happened in Maui happened in Maui as well. Had there been controlled burns, probably wouldn't have happened, those wildfires in Maui. They outlawed controlled burns. Why? Because of some green weenie reason as to why it causes carbon emissions. Okay. They didn't allow water to flow to southern parts of the state from Northern California. He could have done this, allowed that by signing a water restoration declaration. He didn't sign it, Governor Gavin Newsom. Why? Because he wanted to protect a little fish species called the Delta smelt. And he wanted to hoard the water for this extinct or near extinct species, and he wanted to preserve the Delta smelt over providing water to people. And don't look at me. I'm not the one who says this. The farmers in California are constantly lobbying to get that water downstate from Northern California. They're depriving the rest of the state of this water. That would have kept the lands wet. Wouldn't have the state wouldn't be so dry, and it wouldn't have favored conditions for a wildfire of this size. More water and forest management. That is a very simple answer. So when you have the normal fire department saying that's $1 billion question, what strategies are needed to limit this, loss of life and limit this catastrophic damage? And they say that's $1 billion question. There's no easy or obvious answer. No, it is easy. It is obvious. Let's start doing controlled burns. Let's start getting water to the rest of the state. I mean, water and forest management. That's it. It is very easy. Also, let's not cut the Los Angeles Fire Department's budget by $17 million, which happened under Karen Bass, the mayor, the progressive mayor, who was funded by Barack Obama. Barack Obama funded her campaign, and this guy, Caruso, was going to be the mayor. Okay, but unfortunately, we have Democrat machines propping up terrible candidates like Karen Bass. She was on the short list for Joe Biden's vice president, by the way. Let's not cut the budget of the fire department, $17 million cut. Let's not send our equipment over to people in Ukraine. Okay, probably not a wise choice, given that you are in a state that is prone to wildfire conditions. Okay, we probably don't want to be sending our equipment over to people who aren't even in this country. It's a foreign nation. So, I can't stand when, they're like, oh, well, the municipalities, they can't really fight these fires. It's kind of impossible. I understand that. But there was definitely strategies that could have been taken and policies that could have been implemented to prevent this fire from even happening. It was predicted 5 years ago that something like this would happen and that Los Angeles would burn down to the ground. People are peeved off. And to gaslight people into thinking that it is not the fault of the municipal or of the governments and of the government officials, whether that's Karen Bass or Governor Gavin Newsom or this assistant fire chief that I'm going to get to here in a second, and trying to gaslight people into thinking that it's not their fault, that's disingenuous, and quite frankly, it's disgusting. People have every right to be mad at these government officials, and I hope that they're mad at them, and I hope that they go to the ballot box and they vote these people out because it'd be in your best interest. I hope your mindset changes if you live in Los Angeles and you stop voting for these people. All right, I do want to shift gears. Let's actually talk about this angry citizen. Speaking of angry citizens, I'm angry, but let's talk about this angry citizen who had the opportunity to confront Governor Gavin Newsom about the fires. And, he did what any other leader would do. He lied. I'm going to say, I don't know for sure if he was lying, but he pretended to be on the phone talking with the president of the United States. Let's take a listen. Here we go.
Governor, you got a second? Governor, I live here, Governor. That was my daughter's school, Governor. Please tell me what you're going to do. I'm not going to hurt him, I promise.
I'm literally talking to the president right now to specifically answer the question of what we can do for you and your daughter.
Can I hear it? Can I hear your call? Because I don't believe it.
I'm sorry. There's literally, I've tried 5 times. That's why I'm walking around to make the
Why
call.
is the president not taking your call?
Because it's not going through.
Why?
So I have to get cell service.
So let's get it. Let's get it. I want to be here when you call the president.
I appreciate it. I'm doing that right now. And it's to immediately get reimbursements, individual assistance, and to help you. I'm devastated for you. I'm so sorry, especially for your daughter. I have 4 kids. Losing
Everyone who went to school there, they lost their homes. They lost 2 homes because they were living in one and building another. Governor, please tell me, what are you going to do with the president right now?
We're getting the resources to help rebuild.
Why was there no water in the hydrants, Governor?
That's all literally.
Is it going to be different next time?
It has to be. Has to be. Of course.
What are you going to do?
I'm doing
To fill the
everything I can.
hydrants. I would fill them up personally. You know that.
I literally.
I would fill up the hydrants myself.
I understand.
But would you do that?
I would do whatever I can.
But you're not. I see do you know there's water dripping over there, Governor? There's water coming out there. You can use it.
I appreciate it. I'm going to make the call to address everything I can right now, including making sure people
I'd
are
like
safe.
to make sure you do. Can I have an opportunity?
Okay. So this was a citizen, and really what the conversation, I mean, the way this kind of went down was, hey, Governor Gavin Newsom, my neighbor, their house is burned to the ground. That's my kid's school over there, burned to the ground. Are you happy? What are you going to do about it, Governor Gavin Newsom? What are you going to do? Newsom, he's like, oh, I'm on the phone with the president of the United States right now. The citizen's like, oh, Donald Trump, president of the United States? And he goes, no, the other guy, Joe Biden. Oh, okay, well, put him on speakerphone. Can't do that. I don't have him on the phone yet. Wow. I'm kind of surprised here that Governor Gavin Newsom didn't mumble under his breath, ring, ring. Oh, I got to take this. I got to leave. Bye, concerned citizen. So the fire trucks, actually right now, I mean, there's just so much incompetence, and it just keeps piling on, the incompetence here. Now we have fire trucks. They haven't gone through DOT inspections. So there were, I think it's 50 plus fire trucks or something like that. Fire trucks are being sent to help now from Oregon, from, all over the state of California. They're all being sent there to the Los Angeles area to get on the front lines. But guess what? They are waiting in line for DOT inspection. So they haven't gone through and rapidly heck, I wouldn't even go through a DOT inspection. I don't know what a DOT inspection actually is and how important it is to the operation, but it's come on, this sounds like bureaucratic red tape. You're going to have lines and lines of fire trucks that could be used to fight these fires. You're just going to have them line up, and you're going to require them to go through this DOT inspection, and you're not going to go through this at a rapid rate and get these fire trucks to the front lines. I feel like I'm being punked. You must feel like you're being punked. This can't be real. Democrat policies have run not only this state, the state of Illinois, into the ground, but the state of California. And now people are going through catastrophe there. And somebody needs to have a serious come to Jesus movement moment here in the state of California. And I don't know if that's even legal there in the state of California, whatever deities are legally allowed to be worshipped in LA. But somebody needs to have a come to Jesus moment, and they need to get rid of this incompetent leadership. I hope that the voters have come to Jesus moment and they realize how incompetent this leadership is. Governor Gavin Newsom, Karen Bass. We know that the media isn't going to be, we know that the normal fire department isn't going to call out the government officials and the incompetent leadership there. We know that the media won't call it out. The media is going to settle on blaming Donald Trump, climate change, and just saying that the fire of this size is just too impossible to fight, okay? But nobody's going to talk about the progressive policies that led to this moment. Nobody's going to talk about the progressive politicians that are incompetent, and they're going to say, it's complicated. Okay, everybody's going to say, it's complicated. Trust the experts, consult the experts, because it's a complicated situation. It's not all that complicated. I'm going to be honest with you. It's not. There is a very simple solution, and it is to do controlled burns and get the water to the dang state. And really what this it needs to come from us. This come to Jesus movement needs to come from should come from us, the voters, women like this woman who confronted California Governor Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass need to be held responsible for their incompetence, and it needs to be coming from the voters of California. And they need to hold them accountable for their incompetence and for where their priorities actually lie. Their priorities are all about checking a box, a marginalized box, a DEI box. How many lesbians can we hire in the normal fire department? They might not be great firefighters, but hey, at least they're lesbian. So, every American citizen, you need to be watchful and mindful of who is serving you in these positions. So I'm going to be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat. I'm going to get to the assistant fire chief. Like I said, her name is Kristen. There's 3 Kristins or variations of Christinas in the LA Fire Department, all lesbians, 3 lesbians named Christine, Kristen, and Christina, and they all run the Los Angeles Fire Department. Okay, and they were pretty much given their titles because they were handed these titles because of insignificant preferences in the bedroom, and that's currently the status quo in California and many other states. You're given positions of power based on insignificant birth traits and your preferences in the bedroom. So we're going to get to this video. You're going to get a kick out of it. It's LA Fire Department Assistant Chief Christine Larson, and she made her rounds on social media just the other day. So I'm going to be right back with that clip next. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. So do appreciate you tuning in. We might revisit, I probably will revisit what happened at the Bloomington Eastland Mall yesterday or over the weekend. The police department, they urged civilians, specifically civilians who were traumatized by a robbery, and the Bloomington Police Department didn't call it a robbery, which is odd, but they're encouraging civilians and urging civilians to not spread misinformation. So a lot of civilians thought it was a shooter. It turns out, and allegedly, because this hasn't been confirmed by the Bloomington Police Department because they didn't put out accurate information, but they accused people of spreading false claims, but yet they're not putting out accurate information, or at least enough information to dispel or the false claims that were circulating on social media about it being a shooter. There's not a whole lot of fact. They said that it's not a shooter. They said that they had gone out to the scene because of a report of a burglary, but it turns out a guy had been smashing up this glass at Rogers and Holland in the mall with a hammer, about 8 times. Now, this is according to the victim, who said that they had actually called into the Bloomington Police Department and made the 911 call, and that somebody was taking a hammer and smashing up this glass case and robbed the jewelry store. So now I guess it's the civilians who were like in the food court, and people were running around saying that there was a shooter. It wasn't a shooter. There was no gunfire. However, somebody did take a hammer, allegedly, and just smashed up the glass case in the jewelry store and, took things and fled. I don't think that there's any suspects. At least the Bloomington Police Department hasn't come out with any or any kind of arrests. So now they're accusing they're accusing these victims who experienced this incident at the Eastland Mall of spreading misinformation because, oh no, they went online and they said that they thought there was a shooter at the Eastland Mall. And I understand that was inaccurate information, but then they go and then they say that they caused the unnecessary fear and confusion. The victims, and I mean, this is victim blaming. The only person who caused unnecessary fear and confusion is the guy who chose to go into a store with a hammer and smashed up the jewelry store case. Okay, so that's the only person who caused the unnecessary fear, not the civilians who were traumatized by the event and not with malicious intent spread some things that they perceived that were not true. Ultimately, were not true that there was gunfire, but they perceived it to be true in the moment. People running around saying there was gunfire, and they're being loud popping noises, which was actually the sound of the hammer coming down on this glass case. So we're going to get to that here in just a second. But before I took the break, I was telling you a little bit about this woman. So she is the assistant fire chief. She's LA's assistant fire chief, and there's this official video of her. And gosh, this makes my brain hurt. I guess there's 3 lesbians at the top levels of the Los Angeles Fire Department, and they're all named Christine, or a variation of Christine. So there's Christine, Kirsten, and Christina, and they all run the Los Angeles Fire Department, and it's unclear if these 3 individuals earned their titles based on merit or if they earned them based on insignificant preferences. I am willing to bet that it was their insignificant preferences that got them this job. DEI, checking a marginalized box. I'm part of the LGBTQ community, so I should be a firefighter assistant chief or an LAFD assistant chief. So nonetheless, LA Fire Department Assistant Chief Christine Larson made the rounds on social media after a video went viral. So this video has gone viral now of her talking about how she believes there are 2 things that are very, very important when fighting fires: skin color and carrying your husband. Let's take a listen to this clip. Here we go.
You want to see somebody that responds to your house, your emergency, whether it's a medical call or a fire call, that looks like you. It gives that person a little bit more ease, knowing that somebody might understand their situation better. Is she strong enough to do this? Or, you couldn't carry my husband out of a fire. Which my response is, he got himself in the wrong place if I have to carry him out of a fire.
And then it says about 5% of working firefighters are women. Okay, I've always said this: to be a firefighter, you got to be able to carry a 200 plus man out of fire. Okay, and if you're not able to do that, then you shouldn't be a firefighter or something. Okay, or at least be able to carry that individual with at least one other person. And if you can't do that, then you shouldn't be a firefighter. If you don't meet the physical requirements the job demands of you, then you shouldn't be a firefighter. Firstly, I don't think anyone calls the fire department. Okay. Have you ever called the fire department? If you've ever experienced a fire, I'm sorry, but I'm willing to bet if there was a fire and you called the fire department, I don't think your first thought here was, gee, I sure hope that the person responding to this fire has the same color of skin I do or has the same sexual preferences I do. I don't think that you're thinking that when you're calling the fire department or a police department. I'm going to be honest with you. Secondly, until I see proof, I don't believe that Kristen Larson here, the lesbian Los Angeles Fire Department chief here, the assistant chief, until I see proof, I don't think that she can actually carry somebody's husband out of the fire. And I don't even know why she made this. Was it a joke? She said, oh, well, the husband, got himself into that position in the first place. When people ask me if I can carry your husband out of the fire, I always respond, well, your husband got himself into this fire. Not even a funny joke and kind of distasteful, if you ask me. Okay. So according to Front Page Magazine, Kristen Larson, who has a degree in sociology, headed the Equity on Fire, an organization complaining that the LA Fire Department was sexist and racist, and then was rewarded with the title of LA Fire Department's first lesbian Equity Bureau chief. And guess how much this woman gets paid? $339,000 a year. That's her salary, folks, being the first lesbian Equity Bureau chief. And she is the current LA Fire Department assistant chief. Okay, so diversity mandates have led to 3 lesbians named some version of Kirsten running the LAFD. So this is from Front Page Magazine. They said diversity mandates have led to 3 lesbians. And it's kind of interesting. All of their names are like Christine, Kristen, and what is it? Christine, Kristen, Kirsten, and Christina. I don't know. So there's just all these different. Meanwhile, Jamie Brown became LA Fire Department's first lesbian training commander. So now there's a total of 4 lesbians. And like I said, I really wouldn't care if they were actually put in those positions based on merit. It's unclear if they were actually put in those positions based on merit. This individual, the clip I just shared with you, she's overweight. Larson is overweight. Christine Larson is overweight, objectively. And I don't think that she'd be able to carry anybody out of a fire. I'm going to be honest with you, which tells me all I really need to know is that you weren't hired based on merit. Okay, you can't even, I bet, until I see proof, you can't carry a guy out of a fire. But the LAFD, they also have the first lesbian training commander, Jamie Brown. Her accomplishment was being the only one of the 4 lesbians who weren't named a variation of Kristen. So I think Karen probably would have suited all of these women. That name probably better suits them. But the real issue here is that these crucial government agencies like a fire department, they are turning public safety into a joke. Okay, she actually comes out here. Let me play this one more time for you. She actually comes out here and suggests that people care about the skin color and the sexual preferences of the responding officer or the responding firefighter to a situation when you call the fire department. Take a listen.
You want to see somebody that responds to your house, your emergency, whether it's a medical call or a fire call, that looks like you. It gives that person a little bit more ease, knowing that somebody might understand their situation better.
What? Oh, man. Since when has it become crucial that people be promoted because they have certain preferences in the bedroom or because they have a certain skin color or an insignificant birth rate? Why is that a thing? Really? Why do we need more women firefighters? Why? Why would we need more women firefighters? Why is that crucial? At the very least, one would hope that the city would not play politics when it comes to public safety, but never underestimate the sheer stupidity of progressive officials. 100% we know that they prioritize DEI, and they should have been prioritizing things like, oh, I don't know, advocating for their budget not to be cut, making sure that they weren't sending their equipment over to Ukraine. If Governor Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass don't receive the criticism they deserve, there's two reasons. The media is de facto a PR wing of the Democratic Party. So while they don't think twice about criticizing the response if California were a red state, if California were a red state, oh, they would be grilling. They would definitely be grilling Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass if they were Republican politicians, or if California was a red state. But the media is running a PR campaign for the Democratic Party here. That's why they're not receiving the criticism that they deserve, Karen Bass and Governor Gavin Newsom. The second reason is that they probably will blame this on climate change, and they're going to try to exaggerate the size of this wildfire, which I'm not saying it's not a large wildfire, but this wildfire could have been prevented. And it's not like this outrageous climate change wildfire. And they're going to try to shield the public from obvious, blatant government incompetence. That's what they're going to try to do here, to not allow Governor Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass to receive the criticism that they so rightly deserve. I'm going to be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Hey, go ahead, smash that like button, share this out with your friends. We're going to get to Ron DeSantis here in just a little bit, because he is giving the government officials, Governor Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass, the criticism that they deserve. And he is the voice of reason across the country. The media is refusing to give these politicians any kind of coverage that they deserve or criticism that they deserve, Governor Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass, for their incompetence. Really, that's what this is. It's incompetence. That this fire was totally preventable. A fire of this size was totally preventable. We've been saying for 5 years now that a fire was like this was bound to happen. There were Joe Rogan, Donald Trump, firefighters within the Los Angeles Fire Department speaking with Joe Rogan about the possibility of Los Angeles being burnt down to the ground in a fire so big that it would just burn all the way to the ocean. So 5 years people have been warning about this, but there was no. And actually somebody texted in, they said, hey, I actually was recently in Southern California walking through the neighborhoods. No property had grass. It was too dry. Occasionally you would see a yard. It was very plush and green. Upon closer inspection, the resident had laid down outdoor carpeting on their yard to stimulate the grass, or to simulate grass. So it wasn't actually grass. It was like carpet. And locally, people don't understand the water situation here in California. Your water bill in California is extravagant. No one waters their lawns unless you're uber wealthy. Well, and actually, I think that that was a thing, an ordinance that was put in place, or a law that was put in place, that you can't water your grass because, they wanted to preserve water or whatever. Green weenie policies again, and they're trying to preserve water. There's water. There's water that can be flowed down to the rest of the state. Look it up, the Water Restoration Declaration that Governor Gavin Newsom refused to sign because he wanted to protect the Delta smelt. And this is what Donald Trump has been talking about for years. And guess what? He turned out to be right. Donald Trump was right about everything, including the water management and the forest preservation, or the forest management in the state of California, and the neglect from our officials. So Ron DeSantis is calling it all out. So we're going to get to that. Plus, I think we'll get to this. We have the Biden administration. They wanted males to invade female-only spaces, and that's not going to work out because a federal court has struck down Joe Biden's Title IX gender identity rule. So I'll tell you what that means. The federal court striking this down, they ruled in favor and vacated the Biden administration's radical new Title IX rule nationwide. They said, nope, we're not going to do this. We're going to protect girls' privacy in locker rooms, and we're not going to allow men to infiltrate female-only spaces like bathrooms. So we're going to get to that story as well. Good morning. So we appreciate you tuning in each and every single morning. I'm Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. A little bit later, we're going to be talking about the Biden administration. They tried to invade female-only spaces. They had this new Title IX rule. It was actually just struck down by a federal court. They ruled in favor and vacated the Biden administration's radical new Title IX rule. Okay, the court order is a resounding victory for protection of girls' privacy spaces, their private locker rooms, their private showers, their private bathrooms, and the freedom actually to speak biologically accurate pronouns and use biologically accurate pronouns. All of this is a victory. So we're going to get to that here in just a second. But before I took the break, I was telling you a little bit about, how the media, they're refusing to give these politicians the coverage that they deserve and the criticism that they deserve. And this is why Ron DeSantis is the only voice of reason in this country. And he's the voice of reason across the country. This video just went everywhere over the weekend. Take a listen.
President-elect or a president to be criticizing.
Is it appropriate for people in your industry to try to create division and to try to create narratives anytime these things happen? Now, you're not as interested in doing that because Newsom is a D. If Newsom was a Republican, you guys would you would have it nailed to the wall for what they're doing over there. And I know we've dealt with it. We just assume in Florida, anytime something happens, it's going to be politicized by the media. So you guys sitting in judgment of Donald Trump, I mean, excuse me, I think your track record of politicizing these things is very, very bad.
Okay, last question. Newsom should resign and that the wildfires are all his fault. So do you agree with those comments?
I remember when we had the Surfside Tower collapse, I had people from the Washington Post trying to blame me for it immediately without having any facts or anything. Oh, he didn't declare a state of emergency. First of all, state of emergency doesn't mean you can't respond. It's all that. Excuse me?
Biden did it. That's what you said.
Well, but what I'm telling you is you guys are trying to make an issue of it when I have watched from this seat. In fact, when I got elected governor, I was meeting with some of the other Republican governors, and what they would say is, hey, if you have a natural disaster, just know Media's coming at you, they're going to do it. It's not the same. That mayor of LA, if that were a Republican mayor, I could only imagine what that would do. I mean, you know the fires are at high risk and you try to go to Africa or wherever she was to go on some type of voyage. You should have been there preparing and doing that. And yet I don't see a lot of heat being directed in that thing. And so, I'd like to see some balance on how this is done. You can criticize the president-elect, but I think you also have to hold these other people accountable, and I have not seen that.
You have to hold these other people accountable. Yeah, the entire state and the city is ran by a bunch of incompetent DEI hires, and the media refuses to expose the neglect that they have caused through their policies. You cannot get a worse response to a disaster than this. I really don't think that you can get a worse response. You can't get a worse strategy or policy that could have prevented this. They should have put in policies and strategies that would have prevented this type of wildfire from getting out of hand. And nobody seems to care to report on it. Just look at what they're doing, some of the politicians in California right now. I'm going to take a quick break, but we're going to come back to what the California politicians are doing at the State House right now, instead of, working on a solution and a response to the LA wildfires. I'll be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat. Hey, go ahead and smash that like button. For the stream, I'll address this story one more time, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about the California General Assembly, what they're doing with this special legislative session. They're trying to get as much dollars, a lot of dollars together to try to combat Donald Trump's federal policy. So we're going to get to the California General Assembly here in just a second, but I want to talk about victim blaming and how it's a terrible look for the police department. The Bloomington Police Department, they put out an informational release here where they said, we encourage everyone to verify information before sharing it online, as spreading false information can cause unnecessary fear and confusion. So really they're criticizing, or they're accusing the civilians who were traumatized by this robbery at Eastland Mall. They are accusing them of spreading or of causing unnecessary fear and confusion. Yes, there were false claims spread. However, these are victims of crime. Okay, when you have people running around shouting gunfire, gunfire, and then you hear loud popping noises, and what they had heard actually, given the accounts of the victim, right? Given the account from the victim of the Rogers and Holland store coworker, there were a couple of coworkers with this individual who called into the police, allegedly. I don't even know if this is true because the police didn't confirm it, but according to comment, the person who said that they called in the 911 call, they smashed, of course, the glass, this individual, and robbed the place with a hammer. So took a hammer 8 times and smashed the glass. That is what the popping noise was. People were led in the food court and not right there at the store. They were all led to believe that that was actually gunfire. And then they all started running around screaming gunfire. This is a heightened state of emotion that these people are obviously in. And they got on social media and warned people to stay away from the Eastland Mall. BPD now is saying that causes the sharing on social media. If they hadn't verified that it was a gun, that they should refrain from sharing it online. Here's the thing, folks. They're not the ones. The victims aren't the one who caused the unnecessary fear and confusion. It's the criminal. And we know nothing about this criminal. They responded. They were dispatched to Eastland Mall for a report of a burglary. Wait a second. Burglary. I don't even know if that's an accurate term, because according to, this eyewitness who said that they called 911, somebody took a hammer and started smashing the glass. Robbery and burglary, very, very different. Burglary is an act of entering a building illegally with the intent of committing a crime, usually theft. Robbery is an act of stealing from a person using force or the threat of force, obviously using force, a hammer. Robbery also requires an direct interaction with a victim. Burglary doesn't necessarily require that. So to call it a burglary kind of not even super accurate information according to what actually happened according to this eyewitness. You've got, Frances is the victim and says that this is what happened. And according to this Bloomington police posted, I don't even think that this is an accurate representation of what actually happened that day. So they said shots were not fired and there is no evidence of gunfire discovered. The investigation into this incident is ongoing. That's all they say about the incident. They said we were aware of social media posts circulating that claim that there were shots fired inside or near the Eastland Mall. We can confirm that information is not true. And he said, we encourage everyone to verify information. What do you want? What do you mean we encourage everyone to verify information? Okay, do you want people run towards the loud popping noises, or do you want them to get out of there and warn their friends and family about their experiences? And although those experiences were not, accurate, it was very real to them. And really, that's victim blaming. The victim and downplaying or trying to make this, seem, and really it's like gaslighting to make it seem like, it's not that big of a deal and that there was an overreaction and that people, maliciously lied or maliciously spread falsehoods. Look, people were just sharing their perspective on what happened in the moment. And of course, it was probably going to not be completely accurate because you're in a heightened state of emotion. You're going to see things differently when you're in that heightened state. So really shame. That's a terrible look, City of Bloomington. You shouldn't be victim blaming people. Hey, so do appreciate you tuning in each and every single morning. Before I took the break, I was telling you a little bit about the California General Assembly, what they're actually prioritizing right now during their special legislative session. They are preparing to battle Donald Trump in court. Okay, they want to battle Donald Trump's policies, his federal policies. Meanwhile, you've got the fires raging on in California. So California, what do you got? Robert Rives has nothing coherent to say when he was asked about the special legislative session and if that was the best use of their time during the special legislative session to talk about funds and gathering together funds to battle Donald Trump in court over federal policies. That is what this special legislation that they're currently holding, that's what they're doing right now. Take a listen to this. Here we go.
I could take a couple of questions. I do have to jump on a call here.
With that, with what you just mentioned.
So this reporter, she says, with this special legislative session, you guys are allocating money to fight Trump in legal battles. Is that the best use of your time?
These wildfires. This is a historic wildfire. This is a historic event. These wildfires, as I mentioned, are going to be quite possibly some of the worst wildfires and disasters in state and national history.
While this wildfire is happening, and while people are trying to understand what's going on.
So she says, while people are trying to understand what's going on, you guys are here and you're holding a special legislative session to prepare for Donald Trump and what you guys are going to try to fight in court as it pertains to his federal policies. Why are you doing this?
Certainly our focus right now is Speaker Ashley. At this moment, my colleagues and I, we are acting with great urgency to ensure that we're providing much needed relief to Angelenos, to ensure that we understand what.
All right, that's enough of that. Good on the reporter who actually held his feet to the fire there, but come on, let's not give these progressive politicians a pass for neglecting their duties in their government roles. All right, you guys have a blessed rest of your day. Bye-bye. I love you. Thanks for joining me here on Conservative Cat. We'll be back at it tomorrow morning, bright and early, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. Bye-bye. Be blessed.